It's a good psychological trick that you use with success most of the times. Story 1. Tell someone if I can make your hand flip over without touching it. Will you buy me insert whatever, then ask them to put their hand out, and when they do, say no the other way. Edit. OMG, thank you for the upvotes and awards. This is my first comment on Reddit actually. Story 2. Reflective listening. Simply being there with someone and reflecting their words and sentiments back to them. When someone shares a problem or grief or complaint with us, we often have the instinct to say I'm sorry. As in I'm sorry for the loss of your mother. What is the natural reaction when someone says sorry? Usually to say that's okay. But it is not okay. Don't put someone in the position of comforting you for their loss. Instead, show that you see and feel their grief. That's so awful. I can't imagine how upset you must be. This invites the other person to tell you more. Impose optimism. Things will get better. Yeah, maybe, but right now the person is upset and needs you to hear and validate that feeling. You can show you understand by saying that sounds really tough. Even dude that really sucks shows empathy without trying to push them to stifle their feelings or it up when they're just trying to be heard. Relate to the other person. Friend, I got a parking ticket, man. You that's the worst. I got a parking ticket yesterday too, man. This may be appropriate later in the conversation, but it shouldn't be your first reaction to make it about you. Stay with them. Oh no, what happened? Invites them to tell you more. If a complaint, be defensive or apologize immediately. Acknowledgement is important. I really that was an error on my part, or if you feel you didn't do anything wrong, at least I can see why you're upset with the situation. In each of these situations, you can use reflective listening to show that you hear the other person and you're with them in their feelings. You're validating their anger, grief, and allowing them the safety of being in it with you before moving on. I use this with kids all the time. Instead of you're okay, pet peeve, we can help kids label and understand their feelings by saying I see you're really upset right now. This gives them the vocabulary to express themselves rather than resorting to undesirable behaviors like hitting. Edit. Thank you sincerely for the gold and positive feedback. I'm going to be teaching this next week in one of my classes minus the F-bombs, so it was really helpful for me to practice explaining it and see that it resonated with a lot of people. Story 3. I work with kids, so I really use social referencing to my advantage. If a kid falls, they look around to adults to see how the adult reacts. If the adult rushed over and starts coddling, the child will usually overreact because they think it's needed. If the adult doesn't seem concerned, the child is quicker to move on. Also, when I was younger, my mom would use a trick on me. She told me that she knew when I was lying because my tongue would turn green. She'd ask me a question, listen to the answer, then ask me to stick out my tongue. If I tried to hide it, she knew I was lying. Story 4. I am an occupational therapist with early intervention, which means I do home therapy with the 0 to 3 age group. Sometimes they are preemies or micro-preemies. Sometimes they have autism. Sometimes language delays. Sometimes genetic disorders. Whatever the diagnosis is, it often leaves moms feeling isolated, overwhelmed, and incompetent. Whenever I am doing therapy, I will subtly orient the child so that the mom is on the direction that's easiest for the child to turn. And then I sing a song or play a game that I know will make the child really happy, and, right when they laugh or smile, I will say, look, she's looking for you. Look at how much she loves you. I can really see how much she loves you, mom. It always reinforces the parent-child bond, which almost always leads to a positive feedback loop of smiles and love from mom to child, which hopefully makes mom feel a little more secure and at ease. Story 5. If my kids are giving me a hard time about eating something, I tell them it's okay, they're probably not big enough yet. Then they eat it to prove me wrong. Story 6. My therapist gave me the great advice that the word should is terrible for motivation procrastination. I'm reseeing it far less eloquently, but basically instead of saying you should do the dishes, you should say I will do the dishes, which tricks your brain into doing it. Because should is far less matter of fact. Meanwhile, I will is very set in stone. It took me a while to do it, but now I barely ever say I should do X, Y, Z, and actually my motivation has gone up. Story 7. Whenever I get upset and realize that I'm spiraling, I start listing things out loud that I'm grateful for. It's very hard to be anxious, depressed, scared when you're thinking about what's gone right for you. Once you get the hang of it, it's easy to make it into a long process to give yourself more positivity time. I'm grateful to have a functioning car. Well, what else about my car am I grateful for? All the awesome CDs I have, my car stereo, songs I like on the radio. Hey, you know gas prices have been lower lately. Well, how do I afford my car? A job I like, a wage I can survive on, coworkers I love, a boss that treats me well. Or maybe I'm grateful for friends and the places we hang out or the scenery in my area of the state. I can list gratitudes for an hour or more if I need to. It really does the trick, and it gets easier the more I do it. Story 8. Ask someone what color is your shirt, before rock, paper, scissors, and they'll do scissors. Edit. My comment is now in a Reddit text-to-speech video. I feel violated. Story 9. When I'm super stressed about an upcoming event, usually a medical appointment or some social event, I pretend it's a week or a month after the event and that the event wasn't that bad at all. It helps me to get over the anxiety leading up to the days, hours, and minutes leading up to the event. In my mind, I know the event isn't that big of a deal, but anxiety always messes things up, so thinking beyond the event is the game changer for me. Story 10. Cunningham's Law. Say something slightly wrong, and you'll almost always find someone desperate to correct you and do the work for you. Works great on Reddit when you get the source squawks. Story 11. When I'm nervous, I convince myself it's excitement, the heart racing, the racing thoughts, the alertness. I tell myself it's all energy pumping myself up to confront a challenge. Story 12 mirroring people, not just in their body movements, but also in their time language. I only do this if I'm trying to connect with someone, and it seems to work really well. Story 13 when you need something from someone, explicitly say I need your help before making your request. Most people like to be needed and feel fulfilled when they've helped someone. Story 14 if someone has to wait for you, instead of saying I'm sorry, say thanks for your patience. Saying you're sorry admits that you're doing something wrong. Thanking someone for their patience is a compliment. It says that not only that they have patience, but that they're generous enough to give some to you. Story 15 the lesser of two evils. Working as a manager, part of my job is to keep people busy. Some people do not respond well with being told what to do. Offering two tasks. The one I want the employee to be doing against an equally feasible yet less desirable task often will send the employee into a productive and happily grateful mode of doing said task. Then I take on the less than desirable one I was planning on doing anyways with good spirit, leaving a positive example on both myself and said task. No experience here, but I can't imagine why this wouldn't work well on children. Story 16 steelmaning. It's the opposite of strawmaning. When arguing, if you know you're right, then paraphrase the strongest, most ideal and robust possible version of your opponent's argument, and then argue against that. This builds trust and shows that you really do understand their perspective and aren't trying to downplay their ideas. It's disarming, and people tend to agree more when they feel like their opinions have been understood. Story 17 if possible collect the urine of people you interact with on a professional basis. The insight you can gain into their personality is invaluable when you send it away for analysis. For example, anxious people tend to shed magnesium in their effluents at a surprising rate, and that's just for starters. Imagine if you knew who at work was a secret opium addict. It could mean the only thing standing between you and a promotion was 6 pennyweight of Chinese molasses. Story 18 nodding my head yes or no while I'm asking a question to encourage the answer I want. It's something I've done forever and honestly don't realize when I'm doing it. My husband pointed it out to me, and also pointed out that rarely do people seem to notice because I do it subtly and naturally and that it often seems to work. Story 19 we like to think we act because of how we feel, but in reality this is often reversed. We often feel things because of how we act. The truth is, we kind of at interpreting why we do things and can confuse cause and effect pretty easily. Did you help someone because you like them, or do you like them because you helped them out? Is your heart racing on a date because you're really into the person, or because the date itself is something exciting? If you know this, you can deal with other people better, not just getting them to like you by being in the right situations, but also simply being aware that you shouldn't take negative things personally. If someone is having a really shitty day, don't get too upset with them if they lash out. Also, the book How to Win Friends and Influence People has some pretty good advice that will either seem painfully obvious to you or completely groundbreaking, depending on how you currently interact with people. Story 20 if you want people to like you in a friendship way, this won't trick people into love. Ask them to do you a quick and easy favor. Most people will say yes to something simple, and help you out, then their brain justifies why they helped you out with I guess I like him. It works surprisingly well. Story 21 convincing someone your idea was their idea. It works 90% of time, even simply adding to their great idea works. I've turned people completely over to agreeing with me when it has little to do with what they originally thought. I'm not some psychic master, and yes this is manipulative when you use it maliciously, edit Thier. Story 22 well, as a kid, not coming from a good family BTW, I knew my mother wanted to make me the least happy that she could. When I got grounded, she would take away something that she thought I was enjoying at the time. In my case most likely a gaming console or my PC. If she said you're not allowed your PC for 2 weeks and I was most entertained by my PC at the time, I would just say fine, I like my better anyways right now. She took away the other thing I mentioned instead every time. To be fair, this could have backfired and she could have taken away both things, but she didn't like to hear my sisters and I complained that we were bored, so that rarely happened. Story 23 if someone is struggling to lift something heavy, you pretend to help while not actually applying any force, like when spotting a weightlifter for example. Most of the time it tricks their brain into now believing they can do it where before they doubted, and they'll power it right up. Belief can be a mighty thing. Story 24 if you work for a micromanager, don't ask them for their opinion or tell them too much. Do the task and do it well and let them know you've taken care of it. Story 25 if you feel a panic attack coming on, embrace it, tell yourself it's happening and welcome it. More often than not the panic attack will subside. The way they work is through fear of having a panic attack. For example, I'm going to embarrass myself, people will look at me, etc. If you take away that fear and allow it to come, it will go away. Story 26 pro tip that can get you promotions at work and literally anything else you need from someone. Okay, so, this is a general rule that has been proven by actual professionals studying business psychology, but it works with everything. So, if you're asking for something from someone else, do not approach them first. What I mean by this is if ever you're able to, don't walk, say, into their office, wait for them to come to your station or cubicle, or wherever you work, and then pop the question. If you want your mom to buy you something, wait for them to come to your room, or to walk into a room you're already in. This subconsciously gives you a position of dominance in their mind. Even if they are your clear superior and you do what they tell you, you being there before them will make them more likely to do what you want. This is always the case, no matter the issue. So do this always, anytime that you can. Story 27. If someone makes me uncomfortable and I want to make them stop, I always stare at their forehead during conversations. It makes them feel like they're doing something wrong and most of the time changes the behavior that made me uncomfortable in the first place. Story 28. If you're trying to get more than a short answer from someone, for example, if you're interviewing someone for a job or something, this simple psychological trick works almost every time. When they finish speaking, extend the pause and don't say anything. Just keep looking at them neutrally and tilt your head slightly. Most times, people feel the need to fill the silence and will say more, give more detail, etc. I use this all the time when I'm trying to get my grumpy daughter to open up about her feelings. Story 29. Kill them with kindness. In the workplace it's worked great for me. Don't like me, I'm gonna go out of my way to be extra nice, sensitive and have empathy, has almost always turned a shitty situation into a friendship, or at least a mutual respect. Story 30. I was always getting stopped at work late afternoon on Fridays to assist with some task or multiple tasks that would cause me to leave late and ruin my perfectly good Friday mood. I was doing two things wrong. One, I'm pretty organized and a good worker, and I deliberately was leaving Fridays pretty light work-wise too. This would cause me to be in a good mood, smiling, being happy, saunter down the hall, etc. I realized that coworkers and bosses don't like that for whatever reason, so I would put all my work stuff, lunch etc. in my car at around noon on Friday. Then late afternoon I would look stressed at my desk. If I walked around the office, I would walk quickly with a thick clipboard looking angry or stressed. If I see anyone in the hall I say something like, "This day will never end," and I will do that up until I walk angrily right out the side door and leave on time. And you know what? Nobody ever asks me for on late afternoon on Fridays any longer. Everyone sees that I'm miserable and that satisfies their desire to my mood up. Office culture in a nutshell. Story 31. Stop yourself from passing judgment. As soon as you hear yourself making a statement about another person, take a second. You never know what is going on in someone's life. Story 32. Ask an easy question your boss manager would be more willing to answer than asking them to weigh in on an entire project at once. They haven't digested the information, and given the time needed they might forget. Don't. So what would you like me to do, given the last 15 minutes of explanation? Would it make sense if I do X now? Given the results, you're much more likely to get an answer instead of waiting and can move forward. Story 33. Giving a reason. When you ask someone to do something, it doesn't really matter what the reason is, just that you have one. People are more likely to do what was asked if you give a reason versus not giving a reason. Story 34. I learned a neat trick while studying Buddhism briefly. If you want to solve a puzzle or problem, don't try to think of solutions. Instead, imagine that you already knew the solution, but have just forgotten it. Sometimes it works. Story 35. If you tend to feel guilty and blame yourself for having to do unpleasant but necessary things, e.g., breaking up with a SO, telling a friend bad news, or an ugly truth, firing or giving someone a pay cut, etc., there is a very strange, yet very effective trick that my therapist taught me. Just imagine yourself cutting up the ingredients to make a salad. Imagine that you are cutting up a head of lettuce, for instance, and then imagine that after you've reached the end of the vegetable, instead of stopping, you keep cutting your own finger into slices. It sounds fairly disgusting, but I find that it tricks my brain into thinking that I've been punished enough for doing said negative thing, sort of like a for tat feeling, and so I feel better almost immediately. Story 36. Silence is such a powerful tool. If someone is saying something particularly stupid, I find that responding with silence causes them to backtrack or continue talking in circles until they shut up on their own. Story 37. If I'm ever struggling with making a choice, I flip a coin, not for the coin to decide for me, but the action of flipping the coin itself automatically inserts a thought. I hope it lands on X side. Whatever that thought is, that's the choice you go with. Story 38. You don't have to say yes, I understand. I don't even do that as a psychological trick. I actually mean it, but sometimes people feel guilty and then say yes, X. Hey dad, can I have another beer? You already drank a bunch of them, dude. Why do you want more? You don't have to say yes, you bought them this time, so I understand.
Ugh, Finn, go get one.
Story 39. I do this on other people when they are stuck on a problem. I get them to walk me through the issue, because you have to verbalize it, you process the information differently. Usually people get halfway though and you see the light bulb ping on. Story 40. With my kids it is the hard stare. Yes, the one that Paddington demonstrates in Paddington 2. Usually it is preceded by, so, is there something I should know about? 3 minutes and they are confessing to everything from stealing a cookie to the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Story 41. In a workplace, if you present your ideas as someone else's, they are more likely to be accepted by other people. This may only work if you are an insufferable know-it-all like me. Story 42. I've been told that I have a very authoritative way of speaking and acting. Little does everyone know that I am always, constantly, without fail, winging it. Story 43. Smile and agree with someone in work about a certain way to do a job. Then when they walk away you do the job your own way. Most of the time they are oblivious. Story 44. Using someone's own logic to disassemble their argument, or staying perfectly calm while your conversational opponent gets angrier and starts making more mistakes for you to poke with a stick. You learn Buddha-like patience, and it helps keep the main subject clearly in view. Even funnier is when they finally provide a key piece of evidence and you drop your argument and agree with them instantly. People seem to get really confused when someone who, up until that point, had dug in like a bunker, suddenly uprooted themselves. Story 45. I'll also add one more. am a master of the gray rock technique. Have you ever had that family member who loves attention and always seems to be embroiled in drama with people you don't know and won't shut up about it? Or they beat around the bush about an issue because they're dying for you to ask about it? I have a family member like this and I can't stand that. When that happens, I gray rock. The goal is to be as boring as possible. I listen, but I do not engage. I offer generic sympathy. I will not be baited and I don't ask questions. Eventually she gets bored and moves on to someone else who will get worked up with her over nothing. The amount of secondhand drama in my life has decreased dramatically. Story 46, referencing something someone said earlier in a meeting to bring them back into the conversation and win them over. Using names, giving credit to their ideas, and just building consensus is so easy when people feel heard. Story 47, I used to take part in amateur eating contests, and when I was nearly out of steam and neck with one other guy, I turned to him, smile and completely stuff my mouth with food as if I could keep going all day. More than once, they just gave up. IOW look confident and assured no matter what, and your competitors will assume that you're going to beat them, then they'll beat themselves. Story 48, in customer service, it is always thank you for your patience. Instead of sorry for the wait, always makes the people feel magnanimous and doesn't give away any power. I save apologizing for when I've actually made a mistake. For a second tip, actually saying wow, that was definitely a mistake, I apologize. Also mollifies and at the same time retains more power than I'm so sorry. Apologizing is different than being sorry. I very rarely ever actually feel sorry for something I've done in a position at work. I'm not gonna let you think I do or act like I should either. Story 49, I'll think things very clearly and loudly as I'm doing them so I don't worry about them later. I have locked the door or I have turned the gas off. Things like that. For some reason making those statements completely cements them in my brain. Another one, for when I can't remember something, is asking myself the question out loud thinking it is okay. Out loud is better, and then going and doing something else and letting my subconscious work on it. What was the name of that person I met last week? More often than not the answer will pop into my head a while later. Story 50, when playing either Apples v Apples or Cards Against Humanity. When your card is turned over, always make sure that you give a little chuckle or be like, ooh, that's a good one. Be subtle, but it's amazing how much people can be influenced by other people's opinions when choosing something funny like that. Story 51, if I'm in a group of people and feel like leaving or bringing the gathering to a close, I just bring out the keys. Make sure they jingle. Even if they are not seen, it's a cue that most people get. Story 52, I use passive body language to calm irate people. This is something I suggest people to be aware of, but really known when to use it. Basically, when someone is blowing up over something, relax yourself. I generally have my shoulders relaxed, postures a little slouched, eyes placid, and make sure to talk to them as if they aren't mad about anything. From there I can ask them questions structured in such a way that allows them to vent. Generally people will spool down pretty quick and I can make the experience easier for everyone. Story 53, giving friends money in exchange for work or favors done invariably forces them to equate the value of their work with the amount of money you have given them. Instead of giving $50 to your friend that spent all day helping you move into your new apartment without asking for money, a bottle of wine or a case of beer won't make them feel like you undervalued their work, despite being the same or even less than the $50 you would have given them. Story 54, keep quiet when I know someone is giving a BS excuse and they expect me to react with a, oh that's okay. You can see their bluff being called out on their face. Story 55, if you know the person you're going to meet for the first time, study them and see what they like, so when you meet them you'll have something to talk about and achieve a good impression. Story 56, foot in the door phenomenon. Start with a small request that the other person will fulfill, then make larger and larger requests until they do what you originally wanted them to do. Works better than making your true request at the start. Story 57, distracting a toddler during a tantrum. Simply ask them what color their shirt is, or that balloon over there, or that cute dog. Immediate redirection. Works 9/10. Story 58, when you are building a project, always leave some obvious and easy to make changes for the customer to make. It creates a sense of buy-in, and they will be far happier with the result. A few examples that I've used: a poorly formatted graph, a crappy font, a weirdly worded title, etc. It works great. Story 59, if you meet someone and their name is one with several possible spellings, ask how they spell it. I'm honestly not sure of the psychology here, but about 95% of the time they flat out tell me that they are glad I asked. And even the rest seem happy even if they don't say it. It's just a simple way to make a positive first impression. Story 60, whenever you can't wake up in the morning because you're too lazy, count down from 10, and you will be encouraged to get out and do what you're supposed to do. Story 61, people have innate curiosity, and are more likely than not to click a random link or summon someone whose job it is to do so. This could be anything, and you still would click it. Story 62, DBT, conflict resolution skills, especially Dearman, which is good for getting what you want. Describe what you want, express how you feel about it, assert yourself, but don't be aggressive, remind them why you want what you do, stay mindful, and don't go off topic, appear confident, negotiate with them. Story 63, be personable, I guess. Ask someone something about themselves and then ease into asking them about the thing you want. If it's a psychological trick, but it works if you use it occasionally and sparingly. Story 64, if you suspect somebody is going to complain to you about something, head it off with what can I help you with. This turns it from a you versus me situation in their head into an us versus problem thing. Story 65, over the years, I accidentally conditioned my sister, who is a very loud talker, to lower her volume if I very quietly say SSSHHH as she's talking. Taught it to her husband and he said he uses it all the time. She has no idea. Story 66. Trying to make a decision. Assign each choice to sides on a coin and flip it. As soon as you see the result, you'll either be disappointed or relieved, and you'll know what you really want. Story 67. I always greet new clients with a chipper attitude. If I'm relaxed and happy, they mimic that response. I work in AV and some people are automatically wary, having had poor experiences in the past. I'm competent and confident and they pick up on that. Story 68. NSFW. If you tell someone that if you imitate your hand motions like you're putting a salt shaker salt in your mouth, like shaking salt into your mouth with a salt shaker, then you tell them if they do that it will taste like salt and you get a funny memory or screenshot depending on what it was. In the end, it should look like they're attempting to someone off. Story 69. Active listening. Do not cross your arms. Keep eye contact and keep your mouth slightly open, not enough to show teeth, just slightly parted so your mouth seems relaxed. A small nod of agreement in the appropriate places. Don't overdo it. A small nod, barely move the head. While this is the best way to put others at ease, it has a huge side benefit. The speaker will subconsciously gravitate towards the person who seems the most interested in what they have to say. This works extremely well in boss-employee relations. It's never bad to be the one the boss sees is on his side and cares what he says, or to make sure your employees feel like you are taking their concerns to heart. I'm not saying to fake listening to get ahead, just be aware of your body language. You won't get anywhere if you don't actually listen. Story 70. When I try to confront someone about making a mistake, I always phrase it so I think something else was wrong, and present what I actually think happened as an option. It makes me come off as less aggressive, and allows them to admit it themselves if they messed up, without becoming defensive. Story 71. If you want someone else to completely believe in your idea, you must make them believe that it was their own idea all along. First, plant a seed into the person's head and lead them to the conclusion that you had in mind, but you need to explain the steps very clearly and visually, so that the other person can imagine it. For example, if you want to convince someone to help you open a restaurant, explain how the restaurant will look carefully, down to the exact molding on the ceiling. Allow them to see this visually in their mind, then, connect the restaurant to your subject on a personal level. Perhaps the restaurant will offer wine that comes from the country your subject is from. Talk about the great wines and include details on where they will be displayed in the restaurant. If you can convince someone that an idea is related to them on a personal level, they will have an even greater commitment to that idea. This kind of persuasion is extremely effective, but it's a skill that involves charm, wit, winning trust, and an ability to read others and tell them what they need to hear during that exact moment. Story 72. I set my watch 15 minutes fast. It messes with people's heads. They are not sure if it is fast or not and then panic thinking they are late. I've seen many silently freak out on the morning train commute. It is quite funny. Less than 15 minutes they seem to be more sure it is fast. More than 15 minutes they think I'm an idiot. They will check their own watch or phone and many will still go with the time on my watch. Some have asked and I have told them the actual time, which only confuses them more because again it is different from what they saw on my watch. I get bored on commutes. On a regular basis each week I will get at least one person slight perturbed that they are late. It is mean, I know, but I imagine the relief they must get when they finally reach their destination with time to spare. Story 73. One trick I have used was to imagine my brain was a giant office building, or facility of some sort. If I wanted to remember to buy a pen, I would imagine a member of staff would ask management if they could store the information to buy the pen, print out a copy, put it in a folder, and put it in a giant filing cabinet with the rest of my memories that are stored there. Story 74. Shut up. Literally not talking will make your life so much better, and people will think you're so much more interesting. Obviously you shouldn't never speak to a point that it's awkward, but try to ask questions and genuinely listen to their responses rather than just waiting till it's your turn to talk. Story 75. All physical feats, no matter how large or small, begin in your mind. The problem is people think that you have to have complete belief in yourself, or that you need to have some huge mental fortitude, but you don't. It's probably different for everyone. But for me personally, if I know I need to do something that requires more strength or speed or dexterity than I poses, I first start in my mind, and it has never failed me. The first step is visualization. You need as close to perfect representation of the world, but in your mind. The next step is what I like to call scripting if you need more speed, but you also need a fairly complex movement that can't be slowed down to the speed at which you think. You can prepare the movement ahead of time. With this you can create very fast and precise movements that instead of being triggered by your thoughts are instead triggered by whatever stimulus you want. Often a trigger I use is pressure on my hands, or something contacting my skin, but they can also be visual cues, but they have to mean something to the movement you are trying to pull off. The third step is all about preparing your body. When you make any movement there are two signals sent from your brain. The first signal is to ready any muscle cells for movement, and all muscle cells that are able to help in this movement ready up, and the second signal your brain sends is the actual signal for the cells to start expanding or contracting. If you give your body a larger heads up through repeatedly visualizing the movement you want to do, it sort of sets your muscles up without actually triggering a movement. The fourth and final step is actualization. If you follow the script you made earlier you will be able to do whatever movement you needed to do, and it will be very fast assuming it is within your physical limitations. It might take a lot out of you, and if you didn't account for everything in your script you could end up hurting yourself due to bad form. In certain situations you probably won't care, and in those situations you only need your body to hold out until it has done its job, but they are considerations that you do need to account for. Story 76. Motivating myself to do pretty much everything that I'm too lazy to do by counting down from 5 to 1 so I can trick my brain to just do it when the countdown reaches 0p. It's based on a book, The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins, and it's effective AF. Story 77. If you want people to like you, give them a big, warm, sincere smile when you first encounter them during the day. The smile says, "I like you, I'm so glad to see you." Fake it until you make it, because it really works, even on people who are plotting your demise, unless they are narcissists, maybe. Story 78. If you have a boss or someone with a higher status than you that rejects your ideas constantly, try to set up a brainstorming-like session, and try to make it sound like the idea you came up with was actually their idea, while telling them how brilliant it is. They may be a bit egotistical and will feel more confident about an idea they think is their own and have been receiving praise for. It worked at my last job. Story 79. If you have an angry customer, first ask them if it is okay if you take notes. That causes them to pause for a moment and changes the tone ever so slightly. Then take good notes. Ask clarifying questions. Once they have finished, tell them that you are going to repeat back to them what you think the issue is and to correct you if you miss anything. This can defuse many situations. They now see that someone is doing something. Now, to finish it off, tell them the process that you are going to follow. If you have the authority, then what you will do. If you don't have it, who you will call. Take ownership of it until it is complete or hand it off. They may still be upset, which in some circumstances is understandable, but they shouldn't be red-faced and screaming.